What's happening everyone, my name is Alex and welcome back to a new review. Today we have a brand new action camera called the Firefly 8 SE. So first things first, you can find this camera for around $130, but I did see it for about $99 a couple of weeks ago, so it really depends when you're gonna buy this camera. For the price, the camera has a lot of things going for it. So first things first, the camera is using the Ambarella A12S75 processor and the Sony IMX117, and that means that the camera can record in real 4K. The camera also supports external microphones, it has Wi-Fi connectivity, and on the back we have a 2-inch IPS screen that's also a touchscreen. So as I said at the beginning, for the price, this camera has a lot of things going for it. We're gonna start with a very quick unboxing. So first things first, the camera comes in a very good looking box. On the front of the box we see a picture of the camera, and turning the box around we can see the specifications. Inside the box we are obviously gonna find the camera and the waterproof case. Now the manufacturer suggests that the waterproof case is good to up to 20 meters in the water, but I haven't exactly been diving with it, so I can't really say if that's true or not, but I did have the waterproof case in water and there was no water going inside. There is also a user manual, and the user manual is in English and Chinese, and it does have a lot of information in it, so if you don't know how to use this action camera it could be useful. And aside from that, we have a whole bunch of mounts and accessories, so you can technically mount this camera anywhere. Now I did find an external microphone in the box, but I'm not sure if that comes with all the action cameras, because this is a review unit, so they may have just included that so I can try it out. So I'm not 100% sure if the external microphone actually comes with this action camera. Since we are talking about microphones, we might as well check out some sample recordings that I've done with this action camera. So some of the sample recordings were recorded with the internal microphone, and some, actually only one of them, was recorded with the external microphone. Now the recordings from the microphone are probably the best that I've heard from an action camera, but I'm gonna let you guys watch so you can see for yourself. What's happening everyone, my name is Alex and this is our first microphone test with the Firefly 8 SE. So I'm currently recording in 4K at 30 frames per second, and I'm also using a gimbal, so I'm not sure if the camera will pick up the noise from the gimbal. I guess I'll have to check that out when I get home. So this is how the microphone recordings sound from this camera. If you're outside, there is a bit of wind, but not that much. So for now, this is how the microphone sounds. Right, I have another quick microphone test. This time around I'm recording in 1080p at 30 frames per second, and I'm talking behind the camera. So under these conditions, this is how the microphone would sound. Now keep in mind that it is a bit windy around here, so you may hear some wind as well next to my voice. Alright, we have our last microphone test with the Firefly 8 SE. So this time around I'm recording in 4K at 30 frames per second, but I'm holding the camera in my hand, so you shouldn't be able to hear any noise from the gimbal. Now keep in mind that we have the water that way, and there is also traffic behind me, so there is a lot of noise around me. But under these conditions, this is how the microphone recordings would sound. So for our next microphone test, I'm using the microphone that I found in the box. So we have an external microphone that gets connected to that USB port on the side of the camera. So under these conditions, this is how an external microphone would sound. Now it is a bit windy outside, and I'm not sure how this microphone will pick up the wind, but as you can see, it's very close to my mouth. So this is how an external microphone would sound with this action camera. And as you've heard for yourself, the sound quality from it's quite good. This camera supports image stabilization as well, but the image stabilization only works for 1080p recording. So if you're recording in 4K, you don't have image stabilization. And next I want to show you a quick clip with the image stabilization on. So that one was recorded in 1080p and with the image stabilization off, and that one was recorded in 4K. So you can see the difference whenever you're using the image stabilization and whenever you're not using the image stabilization. So let's check those out. And as you've seen for yourself, the image stabilization works great if you're recording in 1080p. Now, if you need image stabilization for 4K recordings, you're probably gonna have to buy yourself a 3-axis gimbal. And I actually use this camera with a 3-axis gimbal from Feiyu called the G6, and it does work great with that gimbal. Now, throughout this video, you may see some recordings where I've used that gimbal, but every single time I use the gimbal, you're gonna see a little disclaimer at the bottom of the screen. So keep that in mind. Alright, so taking a closer look at the camera, on the front we have the power button, and that's also the mode button. We have a little LED that can change colors, and that LED can also be turned on or off, and of course we have the lens. Moving on to the top, there we have some holes for the speaker, and we also have the recording button. On the right hand side we have a couple of buttons. One of them can be used to turn off the screen, the other one can be used to access the settings menu or to turn on the Wi-Fi. And to turn on the Wi-Fi you basically hold that button pressed for a couple of seconds. On the other side of the camera we have the mini USB port, so that can be used to charge the camera. This camera can record while it's charging, so keep that in mind, and that means that you can also use this as a dash cam, so we have a car mode available as well. And that's great because technically if you want to do a longer time lapse you can plug in a power bank to the camera, and this way you're not going to be running out of power. And talking about time lapses, this camera can do time lapses with the press of a button, and this is a quick example of a time lapse that I've done with this camera, so very straightforward. And going back to those ports, next to that mini USB port we also have HDMI out port. At the bottom of the camera we have a 1/4 inch screw hole, and that's great because this way you can attach this or place this on a tripod. And next to that we have a little plastic door that covers the 1200 mAh battery. So first things first, charging the camera takes a couple of hours, and on one charge you can record for about 45 to 50 minutes if you are recording in 4K, or about an hour and 10 minutes, an hour and 20 minutes if you are recording in 1080p. And moving to the back of the camera, there we have a 2-inch touchscreen. We also have the slot for the SD card and one button. So this camera supports SD cards up to 128 gigs, but I've only tried a couple of 64 gig SD cards. I don't have any 128 ones. So the ones that I tried, the 264 gigs ones, were great, and I'm actually gonna leave a link in the video's description just in case you don't know what SD card to get for your action camera. The 2-inch screen looks great, the viewing angles are really good, and the screen gets bright enough so you can see it outside. So this is among the best screens that I've seen on an action camera, and that's mostly because this is an IPS screen, because a lot of action cameras don't use an IPS screen. The touch sensitivity on it isn't as good as you'd find on a smartphone, but it's good enough for an action camera. Next we are gonna check out some recordings that I've done with this camera during the day. So some of them were recorded in 4K, some of them were recorded in 1080p, and for some of them I used a 3-axis gimbal, but you're gonna see everything at the bottom of the screen. So let's check those out. And as you've seen for yourself, the daytime recordings look really good. The videos are super sharp, the colors look great, and the only thing we are missing is the image stabilization for 4K recordings. But as I said, if you're using a gimbal, you don't really have to worry about that. Next, we're gonna check out some recordings that I've done during the night.
it just did by itself?
Yeah. Whoa, I can see it already.
Mm-hmm.
And it has green. Is it yellow or green?
It's
Whoa, the water's blue!
from the...
I guess sometimes you have to kind of be, you know.
Whoa, you have to do it.
And as you've seen for yourself, the nighttime recordings are nowhere as good as the ones that we've done during the day, but still better than a lot of other action cameras that I tried in the past. So definitely not perfect. Now, since this is a camera, of course, it can also take pictures, and I took some pictures during the day and some pictures during the night. The daytime pictures look great, they look very sharp and very detailed, but the nighttime pictures, well, they're a bit blurry and they don't look that amazing, but overall still decent and better than a lot of other action cameras that I tried in the past. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, this camera has Wi-Fi connectivity as well, and it can be controlled right from your smartphone or tablet. In order to do that, you're gonna have to download an app on your smartphone or tablet, and you can find that app in the Google Play Store or the iOS Store. However, I only tried the version for Android. Once you have the app installed, you can turn on the Wi-Fi connectivity from the camera, and then you can connect to it with your smartphone. Then you can open the app, and then you can see everything that the camera sees right on your smartphone. You also have access to all the settings for the camera right from the app, and you can also see everything that you have recorded on the camera in the past. So it's very useful to use this, but this only works good up to 10 meters away from the camera. After that, it tends to disconnect very often. Using this camera, it's very simple. So on the front we have the power button, and the power button it's also a mode button. So if you press that once, you can switch in between video recording mode and the picture taking mode, and each mode has its own settings menu. The video recording mode has a lot of settings, as you can probably imagine. So first things first, you can change the resolution, and there are a lot of resolutions to choose from. The camera even supports a slow motion mode, and it can record in 1080p at 120 frames per second. And this is a very quick clip that I've recorded earlier today in slow motion, and I think it looks pretty good for a slow motion video. Of course, you can change the field of view, you can turn on or off the image stabilization, but as I mentioned earlier, the image stabilization only works if you're recording in 1080p, not if you're recording in 4K. We can turn on or off the motion detection, you can choose to have a video stamp on or off, and so on. So definitely a lot of settings in there. There is a general settings menu as well, and in there you can turn on or off the image rotation, you can select the screen's brightness, you can have the camera turning on or off by itself. Of course, you can turn on or off those LEDs if you want the camera to make any beeping sounds, and so on. So definitely a lot of options in there, and the camera supports 3 languages. We have English, we have Chinese and Russian, so no other languages. Now, if you're planning to pair a remote control, like Bluetooth remote control, you're gonna have to go to the general settings menu, and you have options for a Bluetooth remote control in there. And lastly, the picture settings menu. So in there you can select the picture size. You can also select if you want to save pictures in RAW or not. And of course, the camera is able to do long exposure pictures. And I know that a lot of people are interested in that option. So definitely a lot of settings and options for this little action camera. And it's time to conclude this video. So for the price, this camera does offer really good value, and I have to say that I love the video quality for the daytime recordings. The nighttime recordings aren't amazing, but the nighttime recordings aren't amazing from any action camera, to be totally honest. So for the price, yes, this camera works great, and I'll probably include this camera in my top 5 best budget action cameras that you can get for 2018. Alright guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did like it, press that like button, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.